The lights were so bright on stage that I could barely see more than a plunging blue darkness beyond them. My palms sweated onto the smooth wood of the lectern, and my heart smacked a beaten, familiar rhythm in my chest, faster, still faster, like my body wanted out. I'd rehearsed my pitch 100 times in the wall-shadowed corner of my one-room flat, holding a cut-glass tumbler of tap water in place of a mic. But the words dripped and slumped now, they tangled around each other. Art, I said, I want to bring affordable original canvases to Mumbai's working people, not just the elite, my voice cracked. From somewhere in the audience, a dry laugh, a cough rough as if chewing up the very concept. I looked into the sea of blazers and silk saris, not daring to find any faces, and tried again. My paintings, I gestured to the large canvas behind me, my hands trembling. It was a cityscape, but I'd painted the buildings half-melted, like monsoon puddles, bright with turquoise and gold and all the haze of dusk. Someone in the second row leaned in to whisper to his neighbor. The judge, a man with a sharp hairline and sharper eyes, stared at me with the bland force of paperwork. "You want funding," he said, "to sell these." "Yes," I said, shoving the word out. "Cheap art aimed at commuters and chawl dwellers," the woman next to him cocked her head. "Who buys art in Mumbai's slums, Beta? They need water, not watercolors." A snicker swept through the panel. Rage-hot, undeniable rose up in me, but I pressed it down. I heard my father's voice in my mind, bitter and inevitable, just one more foolish tam chasing rainbows. I swallowed, felt the burn in my throat, and forced out a shaky reply about beauty being a basic need, not a luxury. But already their attention was drifting, gazes sliding away as if I'd bored them. My 10 minutes bled out in awkward silence, cut off by the polite chime of the timer. I wheeled my painting backstage, cheeks burning, as the next inventor took his place and murmured into the mic. Backstage, I stood with my back to the wall, watching someone else unravel their dream. The paint under my nails, the musky scent of turpentine still clinging to my shirt, none of it belonged there. My fingers itched. Several other competitors avoided my eyes. Out in the hall, the low buzz of gossip crept under the door. The boy with the canvas, they mocked, a painter in Mumbai, like bringing sand to Juhu Beach. It was easier to ride the bus home in glare and thickets of rundown traffic, easier to wrap myself back in the scratchy heat of my neighborhood. Andal Chawl was alive at dusk, with people spilling out into the corridors, music and cries from fifth-floor windows, cooking oil and incense in the air. The walls between flats were so thin you could hear every argument, every cough, every half-formed laugh. Someone was frying onions above me, and it made my eyes sting as I climbed the narrow stairs. My mother sat at the little table in front of our window cutting okra. She looked up, worry already forming wrinkles. "How was your day, Arjun?" I told her what I always told her. "It was work," she nodded like she almost believed it, because what else could she do? But my father, reading the Marathi paper, needed no invitation. "Any messages from your investors?" he grunted, not looking up. I shook my head, sweat prickling along my hairline. "They weren't interested today." "HMPH, maybe if it was an engineer." He flipped the page, muttering, "Art is for movies and temples, not for feeding a family." My brother Priyank, all sinew and speed, popped out from the bedroom. "How's your masterpiece selling, Dada?" His mouth went up at the edges, trying for a joke, failing. "People don't know what they need until you give it to them," I muttered, too tired for cleverness. That night, alone on the balcony, I stared at the city lights. Mumbai shifted in colors, the soft yellow haze of streetlights, the pink glow from a neighbor's TV that flickered through the curtain. I painted there in silence, letting tension run out through my brush onto cheap, recycled canvas. When my father banged on the wall at midnight, shouting that the smell would poison us, I cleaned up. But the next night and every night, my hands went back to the brush. The months that followed dulled the edge of my anger but sharpened my resolve. I painted every night. I sold portraits to my neighbors for a few hundred rupees. Weddings, babies, the temple priest's dog posed on a faded red stool. Sometimes when nobody bought, I painted over old canvases and sold the same ones again. I went from gallery to gallery, Kalar Goda, Bandra, Kalaba, and left flyers tacked to the doors, only to watch them flutter away by morning. Most days I felt invisible. Each small rejection twisted inside me like a stray bristle in my paintbrush. Mild but persistent, I lived for small shows. On Sundays I hauled my paintings, wrapped in sacking, to the park in Shivaji Park, setting up beside women making flower garlands and old men selling chai from thermoses. People browsed, glanced at the price tags, and asked if I did film posters. When the occasional tourist bought a painting, I would walk home with curry puff pastry, celebrate alone in the stairwell, then hide the money in a box under my mattress. I painted what I saw: crowded trains, the smoggy pink of Gampati Visarjan mornings, the sadness in my father's slumped shoulders as he read of another factory closing. Sometimes I painted joy. The wild swirl of dancers at a wedding, the monstrosity and beauty of concrete beneath the monsoon, a toddler's handprint mingled into my sunrise skies. People stopped looking and started seeing, sometimes if only for a second. But the critiques continued. My work wasn't real Mumbai, they said, or else it was too real, too unflattering. My father would scold me for wasting money on paint. Do you have a job, or are you just embarrassing us again? My mother would smooth my hair quietly, but when it rained, she would worry aloud if we'd eat that week. Friends faded. The girl I'd once loved married an IT manager, and her mother said to mine, "At least she married a professional." At night, I'd listen to the city's howl and press my knuckles into my brow and think, just one more try. If I stopped, what was left? 3 years of this: hunger, humiliation, and unstoppable angry hope. Then a rainstorm changed everything. It was the monsoon's third week, the air thick and alive. I had finished a triptych called Karugali Dusk, 3 scenes of Mumbai's famous food lane: beggar children chasing each other in splashes of colour, food carts tipped with gold and turquoise, the kind of thing I saw in dreams when the city's noise faded. No one bought it at the park. I wrapped it in plastic, trudged through water, nearly gave up halfway home. At the station, while waiting for the last train, an older woman in a bright green rain jacket stumbled in the water and grabbed the canvas to right herself. She looked closely at the painting. I expected her to wrinkle her nose, but instead she beamed. "This is yours?" she asked. I nodded. "My uncle runs a gallery in London. He's always hunting something new. Can I show him a photo?" I barely slept. I told myself surely nothing would come of it. But days later, a man with a crisp British Indian accent called and offered to ship my triptych. He'd pay me more than I had ever made in a year. Within 3 months, he invited me to submit 4 more works to the Southwark Arts Festival. I bought my first real suitcase at Dadar Station. The gallery paid for the ticket. My mother wept at the airport. My father did not meet my eye but slipped 50 rupees in my pocket for luck. London was cold, its skies milky grey, the air smelling of buses and wet brick. But when I saw my paintings hanging wide and tall in a whitewashed gallery, the city lights gleaming off the glass, something inside me cracked open like daylight. People in expensive shoes came, sipped white wine, asked about my childhood, about Mumbai, about what Karugali Dusk meant to me. I spoke carefully, never mentioning the hunger or the jealousy or the bitter jokes. One woman cried in front of my Nirmada at dawn, and I felt for the first time that I had nothing to prove, I could just be. Reviews were kind, buyers were kinder. I wrote home more often, sent photos of packed exhibition halls, receipts, copies of fat wire transfers tucked into simple emails. My family shifted from skepticism to pride in stages, my mother's worried hope, Priyank's clumsy awe, even my father's silence ballooning into grudging respect. Still, something in me could not rest. I painted Mumbai from memory, how the rain slicked the city, how bricks sweat in the heat, how the dawn broke like a promise over the skyline. Each success tasted a little like defiance, but also like loss. When the gallery owner asked if I'd consider living in England, I surprised myself by saying, "No, Mumbai's my colour." A year passed. Exhibits in Singapore, Dubai, even New York. My work sold. My family for a time held their tongues. Yet every time I painted in the quiet before the galleries opened, I felt the old fire, rage and restraint, the ache to prove them wrong but also to return to show not just success, but the ability to still love what had grown me. Andal Chawl had not changed when I returned. It was still loud, sweat-stained, still ripe with the tang of overripe mango and chipped paint. Priyank met me at the airport, taller, older, but still grinning like a stray who'd been let in from the rain. In my suitcase, I packed 6 rolled canvases. The family gathered at home for my mother's birthday, the small living room crowded with aunties and uncles and neighbours. The table creaked with aluminum platters of food, children darted underfoot. My parents' friends asked about England, one uncle boasting loudly about his acquaintance with a Bollywood set painter, another asking if I'd met Elton John. Then came the knock. It was Mr. Taparia, my old cricket coach from years past, with a friend in tow, a matronly woman from the Housing Society office. "We heard you're back, Arjun," she said, a little shrewdly. "Your father said you brought your famous paintings." My father stiffened. He brings them, yes, but what will society do with modern art? It's all lines and madness. Someone laughed from the kitchen, a cousin called. He's an artist now, not just a Hodgier painter, Maury snickers. But the woman pressed, if you have them, let us see. We'll hang one in the main hall for Ganesh festival if it is, suitable. Her tone made suitable sound like actual art. Something in me twisted. The old anger edged up, flush and sharp, but restraint held me steady. I have them, I said, but I'd rather you see them as they are. In the center of the living room, I unrolled the first canvas. City breaths, the Mumbai skyline in gold and grey, sunlight pouring through monsoon clouds, the buildings melting at the edge, the local train snaking like a vein through everything. I put out the rest, each one more vibrant, more unconventionally beautiful than the last. The room fell silent, even the children pausing as colour spilled and grew across the small table. The old auntie, hands folded over her sari, sniffed, too many colours. But Mr. Taperia's friend moved closer. This, she said, voice low, was in that British magazine, wasn't it? She looked at my father. My father hesitated, then nodded. Yes, this one sold in Singapore for 10 lakhs. That quieted the neighbours, the kitchen, the entire flat. My father's voice was calm, almost proud. He did not just paint for us. He showed the world how we live. Silence, fingers drifted to the canvas, careful not to touch but close enough to feel the grains. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Priyank, half proud and half disbelieving, clapped me on the back so hard I nearly dropped a painting. Then Mr. Taperia straightened and said, loud enough for every neighbour peering from their door, we must have one in the main hall. It will remind us how beauty grows in unlikely places. Later, after the relatives left and the trays were washed, my father sat beside me on the ledge of our open window. The night was heavy with the scent of jasmines and cut fruit, trains humming in the distance, the city alive and endless. You always had something in you, Arjun, he said. I saw it, but it made me afraid. He looked down at his dry, paint-scarred hands. I did not know you would carry us all with you. I closed my eyes and breathed in the city's breath, hot, relentless, forgiving, and full of 1,000 colors we once thought were impossible. The rage had melted long ago, replaced by something deeper, quieter, and infinitely more precious. The simple act of being seen and the power of returning home, brush in hand, to those who thought you'd never win.